The cold abandonment. The night sky above the barren world was filled with stars, but the stars gave no warmth. The planet was cold, silent, and empty. Its ground was covered with gray dust, sharp rocks, and cracks that seemed to stretch forever. There was no sign of life, no sound of water, no trees, no shelter. It was a place where nothing should live. Through the thin air came the roar of engines. A large ship hovered above the surface, its lights cutting through the darkness. It was not a human ship. Its design was sharp and strange, like something built with no care for beauty, only power. The ship's engines burned bright, pushing clouds of dust into the sky. From inside the ship, a group of tall aliens looked down. Their faces were cold and without pity. They wore armor that glowed faintly, and their eyes were hard like stone. One of them carried something small in his arms. It was a child, an alien child, frail and weak, with skin pale like the moon and eyes that faintly glowed in the dark. The child tried to speak, but her voice was weak and broken. She looked up at them with fear, with hope, with a question she could not form. But the aliens gave her no answer. To them, she was nothing. She was too weak to survive, too different to belong. She was a mistake they did not wish to carry any longer. The leader of the aliens gave a sharp order in a language that cracked like ice. The soldier holding the child stepped forward. Without a word, he bent down and placed her on the ground. The child reached out a trembling hand as if to beg him not to leave, but he pulled away quickly, as though her touch burned him. The ship's engines roared again. Dust rose in thick clouds, blinding her glowing eyes. The ground shook as the great machine lifted into the sky. The child cried out, but her voice was drowned in the thunder of the engines. She stumbled forward, reaching out with both hands, but the ship rose higher and higher, until it was only a shadow against the stars. And then, silence. The girl fell to her knees. Her chest rose and fell quickly, struggling to breathe in the thin air of the planet. She looked around, but there was nothing. No light, no sound, no comfort. She was alone. The cold cut into her small body. She wrapped her arms around herself and shivered. Her glowing eyes filled with tears. She did not understand why they had left her. She did not understand what she had done wrong. She was too young to know about cruelty, too innocent to believe that her own kind could abandon her. The dust settled slowly. The stars shone again in the empty sky, but they gave no answers. The girl pressed her face into the ground, sobbing softly. For a long time she lay there silent, except for the sound of her weak breaths. Then from her lips came a whisper. A single word, "Mom." Her voice was small, almost lost in the air. She did not even know why she said it. She had never seen a mother. Her kind did not raise their young with love or care. But something deep inside her, something she did not understand, pushed the word out, and far away, across the endless dark of space, someone heard, on Earth. In a quiet room filled with books and papers, a man sat up suddenly in his bed. His name was Dr. Michael Carter, a scientist who often dreamed of the stars. But this was no dream. He had heard something, not with his ears but in his mind. A whisper, faint but clear, echoing like it had traveled through light years. "Mom." He froze, his heart racing. He looked around the room, but there was no one. Only silence. He pressed his hands to his head, confused and afraid. The voice was not human. It carried a strange tone, soft but alien. He tried to shake it off. Perhaps he was tired, hearing things that were not there. He lay back down, but the sound echoed again in his thoughts. This time it was even softer, broken, as if coming from someone who had no strength left. "Mom." Dr. Carter sat up once more, breathing hard. He felt something stir inside him, something he could not explain. It was not only a sound. It was a feeling. Pain, cold, fear, as if a child was reaching out to him far away, begging him not to turn away. He closed his eyes and saw an image he did not understand. A small figure, glowing eyes, pale skin, kneeling alone in the dust of a dead world. He saw her lips move, whispering the same word over and over. "Mom." He opened his eyes, shaking. He whispered to himself, "What is happening to me?" But in that same moment, light years away, the alien girl opened her eyes too. She had no idea if anyone had heard her. But for the first time since the ship left, she felt less alone. The human connection, Dr. Michael Carter sat at his desk, staring at the star maps pinned across his wall. His eyes were tired, his hands shaky. He had not slept well since the whisper first reached him. Each night it grew stronger, clearer, like a voice calling directly inside his mind. The first night he thought it was only a dream. The second night he thought he was going mad. But now, after days of hearing the same soft, broken word, Mom, he could no longer pretend. The sound was not coming from him. It was not his imagination. It was something real, something alive. Michael was not a man who believed in ghosts or magic. He was a scientist. His whole life was built on logic, on facts, on numbers. But this voice did not belong to Earth, and he knew it. It came from somewhere beyond, somewhere far away. He pressed his fingers against his temples and tried to block it out. Yet when he closed his eyes, he felt her again, the alien girl. He could see her glowing eyes, see her small body shivering in the dust, feel her loneliness echo inside his chest. It was not only sound, it was emotion, pain, fear, hunger, and something else, hope. The girl was reaching for him. She believed he could help her. She believed he was the one. Michael shook his head. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why not someone else?" But the voice did not answer. It only whispered the same word again, softer this time, almost breaking apart. "Mom." The sound made his heart ache. He wanted to ignore it, to push it aside, but he couldn't. The connection was too strong. That night, Michael opened an old notebook he had used during his years at NASA. Inside were maps of distant stars, strange signals and unexplained coordinates. Most people had laughed at him back then, calling him a dreamer. They said space was too big, too empty, too hopeless to search. But he had always believed there was something out there. Now the voice was proof. He pulled up the latest star charts on his computer and began cross-checking the faint images he had seen in his mind. The dust-covered planet, the sharp cracks on the ground, the distant glow of twin moons. Piece by piece he mapped the vision to a real system. His pulse raced as the numbers lined up. There, a small planet orbiting a dying star, long forgotten, never explored. Michael leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. "So that's where you are," he murmured. For a moment he felt both fear and wonder. How could he reach her? How could a simple man on Earth travel to a world no one had ever touched? It was impossible. Yet the whisper inside him gave him no peace. It pushed at him, pulled at him like a hand reaching out from the dark. "Help me." This time it was not only one word. The voice broke through with more strength, a cry filled with desperation. He gripped the desk as the sound pierced his mind. He could feel her weakness, the cold in her bones, the emptiness in her stomach. Michael closed his eyes and whispered back, though he did not know if she could hear him. "I hear you." The room went silent. His heart pounded as he waited. Then, for the first time, the voice answered in a different way. A faint image flashed in his mind. A shape, a direction. Coordinates burned into his thoughts like stars etched on glass. She was guiding him. Michael stood quickly, knocking over a pile of papers. His hands trembled as he wrote down the numbers. It was real. It was not madness. She was reaching across the void, across light years, and giving him the path to her. But how could he tell anyone? If he went to NASA with this, they would laugh. If he told his colleagues, they would call it delusion. No one would believe him. No one but the girl who already did. He stared at the notebook, his mind racing. If he wanted to save her, he would have to go alone. He would have to risk everything, his job, his reputation, maybe even his life. The voice whispered again, softer now but filled with trust. "Please, hurry." Michael's chest tightened. He could not ignore her anymore. This was not a choice. It was a call. And deep inside, though he did not understand why, he knew she had chosen him. That night, under the dim glow of his lamp, Michael made a decision that would change everything. He began pulling out the hidden designs of an old project, a small craft he had once dreamed of building meant for deep space travel. A ship that could go farther than any human had dared. As his pencil scratched across the paper, the voice inside him grew calmer, almost peaceful. The child knew he had heard her. The connection between them grew stronger. For the first time since she was left alone, she felt she was no longer abandoned. And for the first time in his life, Dr. Michael Carter felt he was no longer just a man looking at the stars. He was part of something greater, something that reached across galaxies. The whisper faded into silence that night, but the words stayed burned in his heart. "Mom," he whispered back, steady and sure, "hold on. I'm coming." The discovery. The nights grew longer for Dr. Michael Carter. Sleep no longer brought him peace. Each time he closed his eyes, he felt the child's presence. Her fear became his fear, her cold became his cold. The bond was no longer faint, it was alive, a thread pulling him toward a world he had never seen. Every whisper carried more detail. He began seeing flashes. The sharp outline of mountains under a blood-red sky, the broken ground splitting like old scars, and twin moons that hung low over the horizon. The girl did not only send feelings, she sent pieces of her world. Michael filled notebook after notebook with sketches and notes. His office became a map of a forgotten planet. On one wall, pinned papers overlapped like puzzle pieces. Star charts covered in red circles, numbers scrawled in the margins. Anyone else would see madness, but he saw a path. One night, while studying the coordinates burned into his memory, Michael made a breakthrough. He compared them with old NASA data, dead signals, unmarked stars, faint shadows recorded decades ago. His pulse quickened as the dots aligned. There it was, a planet catalogued only once, then ignored. Too small, too barren, too lifeless. But she was there. Michael leaned back in his chair, staring at the glowing point on the screen. His chest tightened with a strange mix of fear and awe. This was no dream. The girl was real. Her world was real, and he was the only one who knew. He imagined walking into NASA headquarters with this discovery. He imagined the laughter, the whispers. Carter's lost it. Voices in his head, alien children, what nonsense. They would shut him out before he spoke another word. He could not tell them. He had to do this alone. His gaze turned toward the corner of his workshop where a covered frame gathered dust. Underneath lay a project he had abandoned years ago, a design for a small experimental craft meant for deep space travel. It was never funded, never built. To his colleagues, it was only another failed dream, but now it was the only chance. Michael pulled off the cover. The blueprint stared back at him, faded but intact. He touched the paper with trembling fingers. The ship would be small, too small for most missions, but maybe perfect for one man. It was dangerous, untested, but it could work. The whisper returned then, faint but steady. Please, come. Michael's throat tightened. He closed his eyes and the image returned. The girl lying on the dust, her glowing eyes staring at the stars, waiting. Her breathing was shallow, her body weak. She was running out of time. He whispered back almost without thinking, I'll find you. The days that followed were filled with secrecy. Michael gathered old parts, scavenged forgotten storage rooms, bought equipment with his own money. He worked late into the night, welding, testing, rebuilding. Sparks lit his workshop as metal frames came together. He moved with urgency, as if the child's life depended on each bolt, each wire, and maybe it did. The world outside knew nothing. To his neighbors, Michael was only a lonely man, an aging scientist lost in his books. But behind closed doors, he was preparing for the impossible. As he worked, the voice guided him. Sometimes it was a word, sometimes only a feeling, a direction, a warning. Once, when he fitted the wrong coil, a sharp pain shot through his mind as though the girl cried out. He fixed it immediately and the pain faded. The bond was not one way. She was helping him too. One evening, while calibrating the navigation system, Michael felt a sudden rush of images. The twin moons closer now. The cracked ground where she lay. And then something new, a shadow. Tall figures watching from the edge of her vision. He felt her terror, sharp and desperate. She was not just abandoned. She was being watched. Michael dropped his tools, his breath quickening. Whoever left her there had not forgotten her. They wanted her to suffer. Or worse, his determination hardened. He was no longer simply answering a voice. He was racing against something far darker. He wrote one last note in his journal. If I fail, let it be known. I tried to answer her call. Then he closed the book and returned to the ship. The night before his launch, Michael stood in his workshop staring at the half-finished craft. He felt the weight of his decision. Once he left Earth, there would be no return, no help if he failed. He would be a man alone in the endless dark, chasing a voice across the stars. But then the whisper came again, soft but filled with hope. Mom. It no longer sounded like despair. It sounded like trust. She believed he would come. Michael touched the cold metal of the ship and whispered back, steady and certain, I'm coming for you. And somewhere, far away under the twin moons of a broken planet, the alien girl opened her eyes. Her breathing was weak, but her lips curved in the faintest smile. She did not know how or when, but she knew she was no longer alone. The discovery was complete. The journey was about to begin, the first encounter. The journey through space was long, silent, and dangerous. Michael Carter sat strapped into the pilot's chair of his small craft, watching endless darkness stretch before him. Stars drifted past the windows, distant and cold. He was alone, but the voice inside his head never left him. Sometimes it came as a whisper, sometimes as a faint image, a cracked landscape, a pale hand reaching upward, glowing eyes watching the night sky. These visions pulled him onward. He no longer needed maps. He was following her. Days turned into weeks. The engines groaned, supplies grew thin, and sleep came only in short bursts. Still, Michael pressed forward. His body was tired, but his mind stayed sharp, fueled by the quiet call of the child. And then one morning the planet appeared. Through the viewport, he saw a dead world bathed in red light. Its surface was scarred with canyons and broken ridges. Twin moons hung above like watchful eyes. It was exactly as he had seen in his visions. Michael's heart raced. He was here. The ship rattled as it entered the thin atmosphere. Dust storms swirled below, hiding the land in shifting clouds. He gripped the controls tightly, guiding the craft through the turbulence. His eyes searched for a place to land. Then through the storm he saw it, a wide plain of cracked stone, glowing faintly under the light of the moons, and in the middle of that plain, a small figure lay motionless. Michael's breath caught. He brought the craft down carefully, its landing strut scraping against the hard rock. When the engines finally powered down, silence fell. He sat for a moment staring through the glass, his hands shaking. After all the whispers, all the nights of doubt and fear, she was real. Slowly he unstrapped himself and opened the hatch. The air outside was thin and cold, burning his lungs with each breath. He pulled his mask into place and stepped out onto the broken ground. Dust crunched under his boots as he walked forward. The girl lay just ahead, small and fragile, her skin pale like stone, her eyes closed. For a moment Michael feared he had come too late. He knelt beside her, his heart pounding. Her chest rose faintly, each breath weak and shallow. She was alive, but only barely. "Hey," he whispered, though his voice trembled. "I'm here now." Her eyes fluttered open. They glowed faintly in the red light like two tiny stars. She looked at him with confusion, then with recognition. Her lips moved and a faint sound escaped. "Mom." Michael swallowed hard. He was not her mother, but in her eyes that did not matter. To her, he was the one who had come. He was the one who had answered. He reached out carefully, his gloved hand hovering above hers. For a moment he hesitated. This was a being from another world, a creature unlike anything humans had ever touched. But then he lowered his hand and her small fingers closed weakly around his. A warmth spread through him, not from the planet's cold air, but from the bond between them. It was real, stronger than ever. "You're safe now," he whispered. Her eyes closed again, but her grip did not loosen. She trusted him. Michael looked around the barren plain. No shelter, no food, no water. She would not survive here another day. He had to bring her aboard. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as glass. He carried her back to the craft, shielding her from the dust. Inside, he laid her on a padded seat and covered her with his jacket. Her breathing steadied, though it was still shallow. He checked her skin temperature, cold, dangerously cold. He set the heaters to maximum and prepared a ration of warm liquid. She sipped weakly, but even that gave her a little strength. For the first time, Michael allowed himself to breathe. He had found her. She was alive. But then, as he adjusted the controls, something flickered on his radar. A faint signal, movement. He frowned and checked again. Several objects were approaching from orbit. His blood ran cold. He turned to the girl. She was asleep now, her face calm, her small hand still clutching his jacket. But deep in his chest, Michael felt a rush of warning. Not from the radar, but from her. The bond carried her fear even in sleep. The ones who had abandoned her were returning. Michael clenched his fists. He had risked everything to reach her, but now he realized the true danger was only beginning. He looked out at the sky, where faint lights flickered through the dust. The alien ships were coming. They would not be happy to find her alive. Michael turned back to the girl and whispered, steady and fierce, "I won't let them take you." The engines of his craft roared to life again. He had found her, but now he had to keep her safe. and the fight for her survival had only begun. The chase begins. The hum of the engines filled the small craft as Michael Carter lifted it from the barren ground. Dust swirled below, twin moons glowed above, and in his arms lay the fragile alien child. She slept now, but her body trembled in feverish waves. He could feel her fear even in her dreams. On the radar, the signals grew sharper. Several objects moved quickly through the atmosphere, closing in on his position. He had no doubt who they were. The ones who had abandoned her. The ones who wanted her gone. Michael's jaw tightened. He whispered to himself, "You're not taking her again." The craft shook as he forced it higher, the engines straining against the thin air. Outside the viewport, streaks of light cut across the sky, ships descending fast like predators circling their prey. Their design matched the fragments he had seen in Lyra's mind. Long, sharp, cruel, with glowing spines of red. Michael angled the craft toward the canyons ahead. If he tried to run into open sky, they would catch him in minutes. But down in the jagged valleys, maybe he could hide. Maybe he could buy them time. The ship plunged into the canyon. Rock walls rose on both sides, shadows stretching across the ground. Michael guided the craft low, close to the ridges, weaving through sharp turns. The radar beeped urgently, 3 pursuers closing fast. A sudden flash lit up the canyon. A beam of red energy tore across the rocks, exploding into shards of stone. The shockwave rattled the craft, alarm screaming. Lyra stirred in her sleep, whispering something Michael could not understand. "I've got you," he muttered, steadying the controls. Another blast followed, striking the canyon wall beside him. Debris slammed against the hull. He twisted the craft into a narrow passage, scraping the wings against stone but avoiding the next shot. The alien ships howled behind him, their engines shrill and merciless. Inside, Michael's hands moved quickly across the controls, rerouting power, forcing the thrusters to maximum. His craft was old, patched together, never meant for combat. Against 3 enemy ships, he stood no chance. But he had one advantage: they did not expect a human here. They did not know his tricks. He cut the engines for a moment, letting the craft glide through the shadows. The pursuing ships roared past overhead, their scanners searching wildly. Michael waited until they overshot, then reignited the engines, darting into another canyon branch. For a few moments, silence. Lyra opened her glowing eyes weakly. She looked at him, confused, her lips trembling. "They coming?" Michael glanced at her, his voice firm but gentle. "I know, but they won't get you. Not while I'm here." Her small hand gripped his sleeve. For the first time since he found her, he saw something in her eyes besides fear. A spark of trust. Then the radar screamed again. The alien ships had found his trail. 3 red signals closing from different angles, cutting off escape. Michael cursed under his breath. "They're hurting us." A beam sliced down from above, striking the ground ahead. The canyon shook, rocks collapsing, blocking the path. Michael pulled the craft upward sharply, engines screaming as he lifted over the rubble. The sky opened above him, and there they were. 3 ships forming a triangle, red lights glowing like eyes. Their weapons charged, targeting him. Michael's heart pounded. He had no weapons, no defenses, but he had one option left. He slammed the controls, spinning the craft into a steep climb straight toward the closest ship. The aliens, surprised by the reckless move, hesitated. Their formation broke. At the last moment, Michael rolled hard to the side, skimming past the enemy ship so close he could see its dark hull scrape sparks against his wing. The sudden burst of speed threw the other 2 off balance. Their shots missed, striking each other instead in a burst of fire. One ship spun out of control, crashing into the canyon below. Michael pulled away, engines burning hot, sweat dripping down his face. His ship rattled from the strain, but it still flew. Only 2 pursuers now. He glanced at Lyra. She was sitting up slightly, her eyes glowing brighter. Her lips moved, whispering words he could not understand. Then something strange happened. Her hand pressed against the side of the craft, and a faint glow spread across the hull. The alarms went silent. The damage readings dropped. Systems that had been failing seconds ago lit up green. Michael stared in shock. "You fixed it?" Lyra's head fell back against the seat, exhaustion pulling her down again, but her eyes stayed open just long enough to meet his. "Safe," she whispered. Michael tightened his grip on the controls. He didn't know how she had done it, but he felt new strength in the engines, new power humming through the ship. She was more than a child. She was something her people had feared, something they had abandoned, and now they wanted her erased. But Michael Carter had made his choice. He was not going to let them win. The alien ships closed in again, their red lights burning against the night sky. The chase was far from over, but Michael's eyes burned with determination as he pushed the craft forward. "You picked the wrong child to leave behind," he whispered into the dark. The stars wheeled above the broken world as Michael Carter guided his craft into the shadow of a canyon. The chase had driven them to the edge of failure, but for now the skies were quiet. The two alien ships still searched, their engines screaming in the distance, but they had lost his trail. Michael powered down the systems, letting the ship drift silently beneath the jagged cliffs. The glow of the controls dimmed, leaving only the faint hum of life support. Inside the cabin, the silence felt heavy, almost sacred. Lyra lay on the padded seat beside him. Her pale skin was flushed now, her glowing eyes half closed. She looked stronger than when he first found her, though her body still trembled from weakness. Michael checked the monitors, her breathing was steadier, her temperature rising back toward normal. She stirred, her voice soft but clear. "They will come again." Michael turned to her, his jaw tightening. "Let them. We'll be ready." She blinked at him, confusion flickering across her small face. Why save me?" Michael hesitated. The truth was simple, yet hard to explain. He thought of all the nights he had heard her voice, all the pain he had felt through the bond. He thought of her calling him Mom, a word filled with trust and need. "Because you called me," he said finally, "and because no one deserves to be left alone." Her glowing eyes softened. For the first time, she gave a small smile, weak but real. Silence lingered, broken only by the hum of the ship. Then Lyra lifted her hand, resting it on the hull. Faint light spread from her fingers, pulsing gently through the metal. The craft shivered as damaged systems flickered back to life, engines stabilizing, cracks sealing themselves as if stitched by invisible threads. Michael stared in awe. You're healing it," she nodded slowly. "I can fix broken things." He leaned closer, his voice low. "That's why they left you, isn't it? Because you're different." Her smile faded. She turned her face away, eyes glowing dim in the shadows. "Too weak. Too strange. They fear me." Michael's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that her gift was no weakness. But looking at her, so small, so fragile, he understood why her people had feared what they could not control. Still, he shook his head firmly. "You're not weak. You're stronger than any of them. They couldn't see it, but I do." Her eyes returned to his, searching for truth, and in that moment the bond between them deepened. It was no longer only a whisper of need, it was trust. Lyra closed her eyes and leaned back. Through the connection, Michael felt her memories, fragmented, broken images flashing like shards of glass. A cold hall filled with armored figures, harsh voices declaring her unfit, a door closing, the sound of engines leaving. The endless silence afterward. Michael gritted his teeth. Rage stirred in him, not his own but hers, carried across the bond. He pushed it aside gently, wrapping his thoughts in calm. He sent her only one feeling in return: safety. Her body relaxed. Her breathing slowed. She whispered, "You, different from them." Michael almost laughed, though there was no humor in it. "I should be. I'm human." She tilted her head, confused. Man?" "Yes, my people are called humans. We live far from here. We care for our children. We don't leave them behind." His voice hardened. "At least we shouldn't." Her glowing eyes widened as if the thought was strange and wonderful. "Not alone?" "Not alone," he said firmly. A small tear slid down her cheek, shimmering in the faint light. She reached out with trembling fingers and touched his hand. "Then, I want to be human." Michael's throat tightened. He squeezed her hand gently, not as a scientist studying an alien, but as a man holding a child who had finally found hope. For the first time since he had left Earth, he felt no fear, no doubt. This was why he had come, not to chase a mystery, not to prove anything to the world, but to answer her call, to show her she was not abandoned. But the moment of peace did not last. The radar flickered. Red signals reappeared at the edge of the screen. The hunters had found the trail again. Michael's calm voice broke the silence. "They're coming back." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, though her face showed fear. Her small hand gripped his tighter. They will kill us. Michael met her gaze, steady and unyielding. Not if we fight together. She shook her head. I am only a child, he smiled faintly. You're more than that. You're the reason I'm here, and I won't let them win. Outside, the distant roar of engines echoed through the canyons. The alien ships were closing in again. But this time, Michael was not alone. This time, he had Lyra, and the bond between them was no longer just survival. It was strength. The final stand. The night sky burned red as alien ships circled above the canyon. Their engines roared like thunder, shaking the rocks loose from the cliffs. Michael Carter gripped the controls of his small craft, his jaw tight. The radar screamed with signals, too many. They had found him, and this time they would not let him escape. Lyra sat beside him, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She clutched his sleeve with trembling fingers. They are here, she whispered. They want me. Michael glanced at her, his voice firm. Then they'll have to go through me. The ship jolted as a beam of energy struck the canyon wall, sending shards of stone raining down. Michael pulled the craft upward, weaving through the narrow gap toward open ground. But as soon as he cleared the cliffs, they were waiting. 3 enemy ships formed a triangle around him, weapons glowing hot. Their voices came through the comms, harsh and cold, speaking in their alien tongue. Michael couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. They wanted him to surrender the child. Lyra closed her eyes, her voice faint. Through the bond, Michael felt her despair. They will kill you if you do not give me. Michael's grip tightened on the controls. His voice was steady. Then they'll have to try. The alien ships opened fire. Beams of red energy sliced through the night. Michael dove, spun, and climbed, his craft shuddering with every close hit. He had no weapons, no defenses, only speed and instinct. But even instinct had limits. His ship was breaking apart. Lyra pressed her hand against the hull, light spreading from her palm. The failing systems flickered back to life, shields glowing faintly. But each time she healed the ship, she grew weaker, her small body shaking with the effort. Michael looked at her, worry in his eyes. Don't push yourself. Her reply was a whisper. I must. The bond between them pulsed with her fear, her pain, but also her strength. She was not just surviving anymore. She was fighting with him. The chase raged across the skies until finally the alien ships forced him down into a wide plain of cracked stone. His craft landed hard, skidding across the ground. Sparks flew, engines dying. He had nowhere left to run. Michael unstrapped himself quickly. Stay behind me, he told Lyra. The hatch opened and cold night air rushed in. Michael stepped out onto the stone, his boots crunching against the dust. He stood tall, though his body ached from the crash. Across the plain, the alien ships landed in formation. Their soldiers emerged, tall, armored, with glowing red visors. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly power. Their leader stepped forward, his voice sharp like a blade. He pointed at Lyra. Michael understood without translation. Give her to us. Lyra clung to his jacket, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Michael stepped in front of her, raising his hands, his voice strong. You abandoned her. You left her to die. But she's mine now. And I won't let you touch her, the leader hissed in rage. The soldiers raised their weapons. Energy hummed, ready to strike. Michael knew he could not win against them. He was one man with no weapon, standing against an army. But he would not move. If he was going to die, he would die protecting her. And then, Lyra's voice rose. Not in fear, but in strength. Her small body glowed brighter, light pouring from her eyes, her hands, her very skin. She stepped past Michael, her bare feet touching the stone. The soldiers aimed their weapons, but the light spread faster than their fire. A shield of brilliance erupted around her, expanding outward in a wave. The alien blasts struck the barrier and vanished like sparks in water. The soldiers staggered, blinded by the radiance. Michael shielded his eyes, but he did not move. He watched her, awe filling his chest. Lyra's voice rang clear, strong, despite her small frame. I am not weak. I am not alone. The ground shook with her words. Cracks spread across the plain. The alien soldiers stumbled, fear breaking their ranks. They had abandoned her because of this power. They had feared what she could become. And now they were right to fear. But Lyra did not strike them down. She only raised her shield higher, brighter, forcing them back. Her light was not for destruction. It was for protection. The leader shouted in anger, ordering his soldiers to fire again. But the blast could not break her barrier. The glow expanded, pushing them farther until their ships trembled under its weight. Finally, the leader gave a sharp command. The soldiers retreated, boarding their craft in haste. Engines roared, and one by one the ships lifted off, vanishing into the night sky. Silence returned to the plane. The shield faded. Lyra collapsed, her strength gone. Michael rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly. She looked up at him and whispered, "Safe?" Michael smiled, though his eyes burned with tears. "Safe, because of you." She rested her head against his chest, her voice barely audible. "Mom," he held her close, his heart steady. "I've got you, always." The night sky stretched above them, endless and quiet. The enemy was gone for now, but Michael knew they would return. Still, he also knew one thing. Lyra was not alone anymore, and neither was he.